Picture two worlds. In the first, a seasoned manager in a 9 a.m. meeting declares with absolute certainty, "Just work hard and you'll succeed." It's a promise, a contract that defined an entire generation. Now look at the second world. A young freelancer sipping a coffee types into their laptop and tells a friend on a video call, "Nah, I'll just freelance, invest, and travel." This isn't a rejection, it's a declaration. Why is Generation Z escaping the very system previous generations trusted with their lives? And more importantly, why does it make them so furious? This isn't just a generation gap, it's a quiet war over the definition of success, security, and the very meaning of a life well lived. In this episode, we'll decode why Gen Z's escape isn't laziness. It's a necessary act of survival in a world where the old rules no longer apply. If you feel caught between these two worlds, hit that subscribe button for GENSHIFT because we're about to make it all make sense. One, the system wasn't built for Gen Z. To understand Gen Z's escape, we first have to understand what they're running from. For decades, the path to success in the Western world was a simple, linear map. Get an education, land a stable job, buy a house, and retire comfortably. This path was built on the bedrock of a post-war economic boom, a time when loyalty was rewarded with security. But for Gen Z, that map is obsolete. They aren't just starting from a different place, they're playing an entirely different game, one set to hard mode with a rule book written for an easy mode that no longer exists. Let's start with the first gate, education. For boomers, college was a reasonable investment. For Gen Z, it's a mandatory debt sentence. This generation is on track to be the most educated in history, yet they're paying a punishing price. Student debt is no longer a temporary liability, it's a financial anchor dragging them down before their careers even begin. The data is staggering. Young, college-educated households without student debt have a median net worth 7 times higher than their peers with debt. This burden forces 84% of Gen Z to delay major life milestones, from buying a home to starting a family. The first step on the traditional path has become a trap. Next is the second, and perhaps most critical gate, housing. Homeownership was once the primary vehicle for middle-class wealth creation. Now, it's a locked gate. In the United States, the cost of purchasing a home has exploded, from consuming roughly 33% of a worker's income in 2000 to over 51% by 2025. The house price-to-income ratio has skyrocketed, making ownership a mathematical impossibility for many. The situation in Europe is just as dire, with house prices rising an average of 53% in the last decade alone. Pushed into a state of perpetual renting, Gen Z faces ever-increasing costs without building any equity. The dream of a place to call one's own has been replaced by the monthly anxiety of making rent. The engine behind this collapse is the widening chasm between wage growth and the cost of living. While nominal incomes have risen, their purchasing power has failed to keep pace with the hyperinflation of essential assets. Federal Reserve data shows that intergenerational economic progress is slowing dramatically. More than half of Gen Z feel they don't earn enough money to live the life they want, and they identify the high cost of living as the single greatest barrier to their financial success. This isn't pessimism, it's a rational acknowledgement that the system they've inherited is not designed for their success. The boomer promise that hard work within the system guarantees upward mobility has been invalidated. 2. The Great Escape. Rebellion through autonomy. Faced with a failing system, Gen Z is not passively accepting defeat. Instead, they are staging a civilized rebellion. They're not tearing the system down. They're building parallel systems rooted in one defining value: autonomy. Behavior is often dismissed by older generations as laziness. Terms like quiet quitting, the soft life, or freelancing are in truth sophisticated survival strategies. Consider the rise of the anti-system career. Over half of all Gen Z professionals now engage in freelance work, a rate far higher than any generation before them. This isn't just a fallback, it's a strategic choice. Their motivations go beyond money. They crave schedule flexibility, freedom of location, and meaningful work aligned with their passions. They're constructing portfolio careers, blending multiple income streams to shield themselves from the volatility of a single employer. The creator economy, a central hub for this movement, has already reached a staggering $250 billion in value and is projected to nearly double by 2027. Likewise, the digital nomad lifestyle, earning remotely while traveling the world, has become the new American dream for 76% of Gen Z and millennials. This isn't an escape from responsibility, it's the reinvention of it. Inside traditional workplaces, another quiet rebellion is underway. Quiet quitting, the act of performing one's job duties as required but refusing to work unpaid overtime, is not apathy. It's a rational market correction. It represents a state of psychological detachment from one's job, a condition that now applies to at least 50% of the entire U.S. workforce, signaling a deep and widespread disillusionment. When employee productivity continues to soar, but rewards like job security and affordable home ownership have all but disappeared, the incentive to give free discretionary effort has vanished. Similarly, movements like the soft life and bare minimum Mondays are conscious defense mechanisms against the toxic grind of hustle culture. The soft life movement, amassing billions of views on TikTok, is an open rejection of overwork, advocating instead for balance, mindfulness, and emotional sustainability. Data shows that 64% of Gen Z care more about mental well-being than financial growth, redefining success not as accumulation, but as peace. Meanwhile, Bare Minimum Mondays is the practical extension of that philosophy, a deliberate easing into the work week designed to reduce anxiety and preserve mental energy. Together, these behaviors form a clear and coherent message. Gen Z is exchanging the illusion of corporate security for the tangible reality of personal freedom. They are not asking for permission to live a balanced life. They are taking it. 3. Boomers' backlash and the hard mode mentality. This seismic shift has not gone without resistance. The backlash from some corners of the boomer generation has been fierce, marked by accusations of laziness, entitlement, and a lack of resilience. But to truly understand this anger, we must look deeper than surface-level critiques. This isn't just a disagreement between generations. It's a profound psychological conflict, a reaction to a challenge against the very foundation of their identity, values, and life sacrifices. So the boomer worldview was forged in an entirely different economic and social reality. They came of age during an era of unprecedented stability and growth, and this shaped their collective psyche. They are often described as competitive, workaholic, and team-oriented, driven by company loyalty, a strong sense of duty, and an unwavering belief in paying your dues. Success in their eyes was not luck or privilege. It was a moral reward earned through decades of sacrifice, long hours, and steadfast commitment. For them, compliance with the system wasn't just a career choice, it was a moral identity. To climb the corporate ladder, to buy the house, to retire comfortably, these weren't merely goals. They were symbols of integrity and proof that the system worked. When Gen Z refuses to play by those same rules, it doesn't just look like rebellion. To many boomers, it feels like a personal rejection, a declaration that everything they built their lives around may no longer hold meaning in the new world. Gen Z's behavior, their rejection of overtime, their insistence on flexibility, their prioritization of mental health, delivers a deeply threatening message to older generations. Your sacrifices were for a system that no longer works. Your path is a dead end. Your rules for success are obsolete. This realization triggers an unbearable psychological tension, what social psychologists call cognitive dissonance. It's the mental discomfort that arises when long-held beliefs collide with undeniable new evidence. To reduce this discomfort, the mind faces two options. The first is acceptance, to acknowledge that the world has changed and that the formula for success that once worked no longer applies. But that acceptance can feel like an existential defeat, a painful invalidation of decades of sacrifice, discipline, and faith in the system. The second and far easier option is rejection, to preserve one's worldview by discrediting the source of the threat. This is where the familiar accusations emerge. Gen Z is lazy, they're entitled, they're weak. These labels aren't objective critiques, they're psychological armor. They allow the older generation to maintain the comforting illusion that the system isn't broken, just that the players have gotten softer. Beneath this conflict lies a deeper cultural betrayal. The boomer generation operated under a social contract, loyalty in exchange for security. If you worked hard, stayed loyal, and played by the rules, you would be rewarded with stability, pensions, and a home to call your own. But Gen Z watched that contract dissolve before their eyes through mass layoffs, corporate greed, wage stagnation, and economic precarity. From their perspective, the deal was never honored. The anger then is mutual, but rooted in different realities. Boomers feel that Gen Z has abandoned a sacred agreement. Gen Z feels that agreement was fraudulent from the start. One side defends a system that once rewarded faith. The other side is surviving in the ruins of its collapse. 4. Redefining success, the new Gen Z dream. Gen Z's systemic escape is not an act of destruction, it's an act of creation. Out of the ashes of a broken economic promise, this generation is designing a new architecture of success, a blueprint for what could be called the new American dream of the 21st century. But this is not a renovation of the old house, it's a complete rebuild from the foundation up. The most radical shift lies in what Gen Z chooses to value. For the post-war generation, success was defined by external markers. A steady job, a house in the suburbs, a marriage, and a pension plan. These were visible, measurable proof that you had made it. But for Gen Z, success is defined by internal experience, by mental peace, autonomy, and well-being. When asked how they would redefine the American dream, Gen Z overwhelmingly placed good mental and physical health at the top of their priorities, followed closely by financial stability. Traditional milestones, homeownership, marriage, children, still appear on the list, but they are no longer the center of the narrative. They are optional side quests, not the main storyline. A quarter of Gen Z now say their number one life goal is simply to be happy. Nearly double the number who chose to be financially secure. That might sound naive to older generations, but it's actually profoundly strategic. Happiness in this new model isn't passive pleasure, it's sustainability. It's the recognition that without mental health, no amount of material success can be enjoyed. The new Gen Z dream is not about escaping responsibility. It's about reclaiming agency, the right to define success on one's own terms. This reordering of priorities gives rise to a powerful new philosophy, the pursuit of enough rather than the endless chase for more. The boomer dream was built on a model of perpetual expansion, more money, more property, more status, a belief that success was measured by accumulation. But the Gen Z dream flips that equation. It is built on sustainability, the idea that true wealth is not infinite growth, but lasting stability. For this generation, the financial goal is not domination, it's defense. It's about building a secure foundation from which a meaningful life can grow. Financial independence remains a near universal ambition, but it is no longer worshipped as the ultimate destination. It is a tool, a means to achieve freedom of time, choice, and purpose. This shift is already visible in the economic structures Gen Z is building. They are not merely walking away from the old system, they are engineering new ones. Instead of climbing corporate ladders, they are constructing networks, lean startups, creative collectives, and multi-income portfolio careers. In these ecosystems, power and stability no longer flow from a single employer, but from diversification, a mosaic of small, self-sustaining revenue streams that together provide autonomy. They aren't tearing down the American dream, they're refactoring it, upgrading its operating system to run on 21st century values, flexibility, authenticity, and well-being. The new dream isn't about having it all, it's about having enough and knowing when that's already true. Conclusion. So where does this leave us? We are witnessing not the collapse of the work ethic, but its evolution. The tension between boomers and Gen Z isn't a clash between hard work and laziness. It's a reckoning between two economic realities. One built for a world of stability, pensions, and affordable homes, and another forged in uncertainty, automation, and skyrocketing costs. Gen Z isn't burning down the house their parents built, they're rebuilding it from the ground up, with better insulation for mental health, wider windows for flexibility, and a foundation reinforced by autonomy. They are redesigning the meaning of work itself, from something you endure for survival to something you shape for purpose. This is not rebellion for rebellion's sake, it's an act of adaptation, a generation's collective redesign of the social contract to fit the realities of the 21st century. A world where wealth is measured not only in dollars, but in freedom, balance, and fulfillment. It's painful, it's controversial, but it's necessary, because progress always begins with those willing to question the rules. So, what does your new American dream look like? Is it the comfort of stability or the freedom to redefine success on your own terms? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And for more strategic insights into the forces reshaping work, money, and meaning, make sure you're subscribed to GENSHIFT.